Yeah, I want to talk about how to think like a genius. And if you learn this principle, it would make you a genius for life and a notable one. It's a method that was adopted by the greatest geniuses, Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, and so on and so forth. And so this is it. Whenever you want to think about a thing, think about how every other thing in life relates to that thing. And I'll show you how I practice this principle. So when I wanted to learn about neuroscience, this was the model I adopted. How does everything in life apply to neuroscience? So I started with temperature. How does heat affect the brain? How does cold affect the brain? Then I went to different seasons of life. I studied the child brain, I studied the teenage brain, I studied the woman's brain, I studied the male brain, I studied the brain of adults, I studied the brain of athletes, then I studied the brains of criminals, I studied the brains of entrepreneurs. I studied so many categories of how these things affect the brain. Then I studied how fear affects the brain, how sex affects the brain, how anger affects the brain, how excitement affects the brain. I studied all this and all the different emotions. I studied how bitterness affects the brain, how hatred affects the brain, how pain affects the brain, So it's about studying how everything relates to your one thing. That's what makes a genius in any field. Understanding how everything connects to that one thing. One more time, the way to build the thought pattern of a genius is to find out how everything in life affects that one thing. So a genius will go on and find out, how do proteins affect the brain? Carbohydrates affect the brain. How does fruits and veggies affect the brain? How does oil affect the brain? Things like that. How does geography affect the brain? Yes. How does comedy affect the brain? How do horror movies affect the brain? How do cartoons affect the brain? And so a genius will try to find out, how does color affect the brain? How does the color red affect the brain? Green, white, yellow, blue, black, and all that affect the brain. He will find out how money affects the brain. How does fame affect the brain? How do things affect the brain? And that's how a genius thinks. That's how a genius thinks.